Hello, 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 everyone. We are back with another episode of Original Stories, and I think I have my biggest guest so far, Jim from the Spike Feeders. How are you, sir?
I'm good. I am pretty big. I'm like 6'4". I'm about 220. I'm a pretty big guy.
You're a beefy dude, taller than me.
Where he's a beefy guy and he's also a very popular content creator. He will be plugging his stuff in. Well, so we're gonna do the regular origin story stuff. We're just gonna have a casual conversation, talk about how we got into Magic and the current meta and what's does the current state of CDH and even EDH. I don't know. There's been a recent banning that we can talk about that's that's caused a little ruckus here and there. But let's start it off. So Jim, how did you get into Magic?
Well, I got into Magic originally when I was a kid. I started playing Magic when I was probably, I'm going to say 10 or 11. It was like right around, right between Revised and 4th edition. It was right around there. And I played from there until, I'm going to say approximately Exodus. It was like right around Exodus. Then I took a long break. And then I got back into it right around Scars of Mirrodin. And that was when I started playing more modern stuff. Not modern the format, but modern, like more recent. And then I started playing EDH probably about a year or two after that.
Okay. Yeah, so, I've been playing for a long. I started when the Dark.
Oh yeah. But we played like what we played then was like not recognizable as Magic today, you know?
No.
We were 11-year-old kids playing on the playground. Like we had a rule because we had to play at lunch hour. We had a rule that you got to play all of your lands on your first turn, and you just
start on turn 4. That's how I started Magic too. So when my stepson taught me, he was like, whatever lands you have in play, just put them on the battlefield. And I was like, okay. And then when I start learning the rules of Magic, and I'm like, okay, this is too broken. We need to play by the rules, guys. And they're like, no, I want to play 6/6 Angel early. I'm like, then you just keep a hand of all lands and draw off the top. That was actually pretty awesome.
We weren't playing good stuff though. That's the difference. It's like
definitely.
We were playing like Master Decoy. Those were the bombs in my playthrough.
Our big creature was Turret Stomper. That was my all-star creature for me in our decks.
Oh man, I used to power out Juggernauts.
Oh yeah, Juggernaut real good. We played lots of Master Decoy and then Royal Assassin, and that was like the 1-2 combo. Was you'd tap down a creature and then destroy it.
Yeah,
it was like
with the icy manipulators.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. The good old days where you could tap a creature and remove it from combat, kind of.
Yeah.
Oh man, yeah. I actually on Moxfield I remade my actual first deck, and it was a mono red goblins deck from like when Fallen Empires came out, nice. Running 4 goblin caves, stuff like that, because. I had a buddy who after when Urza's came out, he would play Engineer Plague all the time. So that was my answer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
So did you ever get into the competitive scene? Just like Magic on a whole, Legacy, Type 2, Type 1. I don't remember all the terms back then.
No, never. I the closest I ever got to that was there was a weekly tournament over the summer when I was a kid at the community center that was a block away from my house. And I would bring my garbage 80 card deck there and get stomped once a week and then buy a Slurpee and then go home.
Nice. Just to socialize. Awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I was 12, right?
Right, yeah. You just want to hang out with friends, get beat up. That's fine.
Yeah, and then we would play with some people from school. And then I kind of quit playing when a couple of them moved away. And but when I came back, I was strictly casual. We played I don't know, I call it kitchen table Legacy, but it's not Legacy. It's just casual 60 card constructed with whatever cards you have, right?
Right.
That was I got back into it because my brother Bill from our channel, he played Yu-Gi-Oh, and then when he met a whole bunch of people from Yu-Gi-Oh, a bunch of them started playing Magic. So
Okay.
he told me like, hey, we're playing Magic. And so I'm like, oh, well, I've still got my old cards. And I built a deck. And then we would like buy some cards and whatever. And it was fun to have a play group and whatnot. And that's where actually like Bill met Elliot from our group playing Yu-Gi-Oh!
Awesome.
And
Okay.
Jerry from our group was Elliot's roommate. So we kind of had our
Okay.
little play group, just playing dumb 60 card decks. And yeah, but never into the actual factual like tournament grinder scene. Like my first GP that I went to was GP Vegas 2019.
Oh, that was like your
What?
first GP?
Yeah, that was my first GP.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man.
Yeah, that's
So-
awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's just playing casual, playing with
Yeah.
people you enjoy. That's why I think that's at the end of the day, that's what we got into Magic. Is just
Yeah.
to keep the friends that you made close and you can enjoy their time at least once a week.
Yeah.
And we do
At
other
the
stuff
end-
too. We play like Smash Brothers and stuff like that. We
Oh, yeah,
play
you got, yeah,
other stuff
Yeah, yeah.
too.
right.
I mean, yeah, tight knit group. That's awesome. Pretty
Mhm.
good. You guys are coming from way back. That's awesome. So, since you played casually, what you guys call it max power? Why did you dip your toes into max power CDH?
That's actually kind of an interesting story. So we like when we started playing Commander, because originally we made the jump from kitchen table like constructed to Commander because I didn't want to build a modern deck. Like everybody was building modern decks, and I'm like,
Okay.
the cards that I like playing, they're not legal in modern, and I can't really play any cards from my old collection. But then shortly after that, Bill came to me and said, "There's this new format that you can play. It wasn't like new, but."
Right.
He's like, you can play whatever cards you want. And the cards that I wanted to play, I really liked Master Transmuter because it was like a little bit newer then. And then I wanted to bounce my shield spheres because I had a whole bunch of shield spheres. It's a 0/6 wall.
Yeah.
And then whenever it blocks, it gets a -0, -1 counter. And I would just
I used to
bounce
play
those with
this.
Master Transmuter.
I used to play in the Spanish Inquisition.
Yeah. So I couldn't play that in modern, so I didn't want to play modern. And then they said, well, we can play EDH. And so me and Bill and Elliot and Jerry would play EDH in Elliot and Jerry's apartment. And, we just did the thing that a lot of casual play groups do where we like go to the LGS every once in a while, pick up some cards, upgrade our decks. And then Bill started looking online because Bill's a tryhard. And he started looking online and started looking for really good EDH decks to build. And he found Cobblepot's Carador Boonweaver list, and he built
Oh
that.
boy.
And
boy.
so, like at that point, we like knew how to play Magic fairly well.
Okay.
But Bill came to our group. We were playing originally. We were playing. I was playing Aurelia the War Leader. Elliot was playing Mizzix. No, not Mizzix. Melik.
Oh,
And,
Mallet. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, and Bill was playing this like Orzhov control deck that won with like Death to the Deathless, and it would just beat us down
Man,
with Divinity of Pride.
Mid-power classics.
Yeah, and so Bill found this Carador Boonweaver list, and then I was like, well, you know what? I guess we got to step up our game, right? And so
Right.
I built a Nin deck, and Elliot built Zur Doomsday.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
And the
we kind of like
Orange
dipped our
Race
toes. We found it through like the CDH subreddit because we were all pretty active on Reddit. And that just kind of kicked off an arms race in our group. And Jerry
That
built,
was-
I think like Kalia
Yeah.
stacks.
So you guys did a dip your toes. You kind of just dove with both
Went
feet.
right in.
Yeah,
were
well,
riding.
we needed to come up with something that wasn't just going to lose every time to Boonweaver Giant, right? So
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah, pretty much. But
Let's play rest in peace. It works.
Yeah. yeah. Oh, and we did.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the first step is you try to tech, and then
Yep.
the tech doesn't work, and then you're like, I gotta power up.
Yep, exactly.
That's
And so we
usually
did.
how it works.
And so like right around that time, I also started writing articles for my local game store for a website called the Mana Base. I wrote a series called the Meta Worker, and I just started posting these articles where it was just sort of like deck tune-up kind of stuff, like here's how to build good Magic fundamentals into your EDH decks.
Yeah.
And so I also started writing about like powering up my own decks through CDH and doing a lot of game theory stuff and like repurposing a lot of articles like Who's the Beatdown kind of thing, taking a lot of those
Mhm.
concepts and
Yep.
and applying them to EDH. And it just kind of took off from there. We built up a little bit of a following, and then we started doing video content. So
I remember
That's
when you
awesome.
guys launched on the scene.
it was like I always joke because I feel like because we started up right as the Lab Maniacs originally were kind of winding down, and
Yeah,
there were
'cause
really
it was like-
only like the Lab Maniacs and Team Turn 3, and like
Well,
that
there was
it.
like Scott streaming. There was Ian Dodo. Like there was a couple of like small guys.
Yeah, and then like I feel like when the Lab Maniacs kind of wound down, we just
Yeah.
picked up a camera. Like no joke, our first episode. First of all, I was recovering from open heart surgery, so like I had a broken sternum and I could barely even shuffle my decks. And
Yeah.
we masking taped a camcorder to a hanging light fixture in my kitchen, and that was what our first episode was filmed on.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
We had a blue snowball. We had two broomsticks taped together over the table, and we hung a blue snowball from it in the center of the table, and that was what we recorded on. But I feel like a whole bunch of people arrived at the same conclusion we did, and that was just that like you can
There was a
do
gap,
it too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like the Lab Maniacs aren't the only people that can record gameplay. You know,
Right.
and so
Well,
Yeah, it was awesome. A very good, very awesome transitions. Like it came in at the right time because they were
Yeah.
dying down slowly, and then you
Right.
just like another giant came out from the woodworks with
Yeah.
those good content, and everyone liked it, and you guys just kept growing from there, and that was awesome
Right.
to see.
yeah, it was wild. And then Playing with Power came out right after us, like within a couple months of
Yes.
when we started. Up.
Yeah, because you
And
guys
they're
started in like
awesome.
August. Because I remember when I invited you to the Nexus, you started in like around August, right?
Yep.
And
yeah,
then
I
they
think our
were
first
like,
episode was in August, and they were in
and
like
then
October.
they
or
were
November.
in like October or November that same fall. That was also right around the time that the Into the North started up.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
That was like
and
a
then-
hell of a year for CEDH content.
Yeah.
It was like everybody just
Yes.
stepped back and was like, "Hey, wait a minute, I can do this."
Right. Yeah. It was a big train.
We can pick up the slack.
Transition.
Yes.
yeah, it was a cool time. Like I remember we got in our first day, we posted our 45-second trailer. That's like still the trailer for our channel, and we got like almost 200 subs on our first day off of a 45-second clip of a gameplay episode that we never even released.
Never
Nice.
almost. That's awesome.
Because people were just primed for it. They wanted more CDH content, you know?
Yeah,
So-
there wasn't a
Yeah,
lot.
because people were trying to get into the format. A lot of people got into the format because of the lab band, and they're just
Yep.
really feeling for more. No, that is true. So when you got into it, when you first got into it, what were some of the resources you used to help you build all the decks that you guys play?
Yeah, this was I know Bill really relied on Cobblepot's stuff quite a bit. I was doing a lot of research from other formats. Researching things like tempo and card advantage and stuff like that, and trying to wrap my head
Okay.
around how that works in a 4-player,
In a
environment,
multiplayer.
because it's
Yeah.
it's a lot different,
It is.
and trying to tackle like politics and threat assessment. Like 4-player threat assessment is wild. I can't believe that people start playing Magic in Commander, because it's like wild to figure out how
To
things
figure out,
happen.
yes.
Dude,
It's so
it is
complicated.
hard.
And I think the only way, like a lot of people ask me, like, how do you get better at threat assessment? And I really just think, maybe, from my opinion, is just reps. You
Yeah.
have to play. You have to know. I guess first you should know what the meta you're playing in.
Mhm.
And if you know the meta what you're playing in, and you know what the deck does, then the next step is the reps.
Yeah.
Right.
And playing the reps, losing a lot of games. Like
I would
don't
also say
expect win.
like beyond just getting reps in, what I like to do in the middle of games is make predictions, right?
Ooh,
so, like-
okay.
Like if somebody casts a vampiric tutor or whatever, like guess
Mhm.
at what they tutored for, and then like
Yes.
if they play it right away and find out, are you right? Do you think that that's the card that they tutored for? All that kind of stuff. Like ask yourself, what if I was in their situation, looking at
What
all
am
the
I
stuff that
getting?
I know about, what would I get?
Right.
Or like make predictions about who's going to win the game. Like say you're like halfway through the game and you're like, okay, well, who do I think is going to win right now? And then if the game ends if it ends in a couple turns and that person won, then it kind of confirms what you know about how the game led up to that point,
That
or
is-
trace back your losses and say like, if somebody won, work back and say, okay, could I have predicted this 2 turns before? Could I have predicted it 3 turns before? Like, what were the signals
Could I have done
that
different?
I didn't catch?
Yeah.
But reps are a huge part of that. You just need to do it over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, the self-reflection with the reps is very important.
Yeah.
I like to have a discussion after the game, like especially like talking about like would this play have been more optimal? Like because I mean, to be honest, in multiplayer, a lot of games that I lose are really beyond my control. Like not all of them, but I could have done things that could have presented better or helped optimize my chances more.
It could be less greedier, Tim.
Really?
Less greedier.
How greedy am I?
Oh,
But
that's
then you
another
wouldn't be an
topic
American
itself.
EDH player. You've heard Sakara talking about American CEDH players, right?
Nah, you would not be. That is very true.
I am
That's
not
very,
the
very
greediest player. I'm like the
Let us not sell ourselves short, Tim. Let us
I'm
not.
not that greedy.
But no. But no. I think I didn't think about looking at it as predicting, but I do call out a lot of plays. But I think how people look at that is instead of predicting is more like, oh, you're politicking because you're trying to not make what you're doing seems like the threat. But they're like, well, like I have this hot take for me is like wheels are bad because normally if someone resolves a mid-game wheel and that person who casts the wheel doesn't win, they're 80% of the time will not see a turn.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's strictly speaking, a wheel in and of itself is card disadvantage in 4-player, right? Like,
Yep.
You're getting 7 cards, but you've got 20, 21 cards drawn against you, right?
Yep.
And they're not all coming your way, but a good chunk of them might be.
Well,
Yeah.
sometimes all
Yeah.
you need is one to come your way to stop you.
Yeah, no, that is very true. Okay, so that's cool. I didn't really think about using other formats as a way to start your own strategy because I always like my philosophy to multiplayer Magic was the person who draws the most cards normally win the game. So if you just overload, or not really overload, but put more than the normal card draw effect into a deck, you normally cause you're seeing more cards, you're seeing more interaction, you're seeing more things. So normally the process is you'll win the game because you're outvaluing your players like 1v1.
But the problem is you got to draw enough cards to be able to have that same, but it doesn't scale is the problem. Because any card of Magic that would be printed, that would be that good enough in multiplayer to scale like that would just be absolutely busted in 1v1.
Yeah,
exactly. So this is probably one of my hotter takes, but I mentioned this in the rules committee Discord a few days ago, and joking 101 was like, yeah, I'm 100% there with you. I think probably one of my spicier takes is that Ancestral Recall would be totally safe unban in EDH, because it's good for sure. It's good. Like having played it in Canadian Highlander, having played it in other formats where it's legal, it's for sure good. It's not nearly as good in a multiplayer game as it is in a 1v1.
I'd like to cast that 15 times under an Underworld Breach.
Yeah, for sure. Love that. I would love to cast it with somebody's Thassa's Oracle trigger on the stack. Because it's target player, not you draw 3 cards.
Oh, that's hot. That's hot. That's real hot. Yeah. Oh, maybe we should unban that. Unban that Ancestral Recall, guys. Let's go.
You heard it here first.
We're at it. Let's just do it.
Let's do it. Let's get those votes. That is that's a nice take.
Yeah.
I think I could live with that. What do you think, Tim? Would you like to cast an Ancestral Recall on turn 1?
A lot more than Twister. I like drawing cards. Sure. I don't like my opponent's drawing cards.
I don't like my opponent's drawing cards.
I say that kind of tongue in cheek, right? Like it's not the Ancestral Recall, but the wheel thing being, it is card disadvantage. I don't think it's like strict 3-1 card disadvantage like the numbers would suggest.
No, but
it's definitely worse. It's definitely worse than a wheel in 1v1 though.
Oh yeah.
I mean, so like I actually did I don't know if it's posted yet, but I did a video about wheels with some people, and kind of one of the things that I touched on was that like as like a mid-range player, like you want to sculpt your hand a lot. So wheels disrupt that. And like, even if you draw into like interaction, like the idea for a mid-range deck, especially with blue, is like they want to pitch all the trash, they want to lay all the advantage engines, and just keep all that interaction in their hand. Every time you wheel, you reset that. Even if they get one or two pieces of interaction, they want all the interaction.
Well, and so they've like,
You know.
the other thing you got to consider is the fact that if they've like tutored or they've drawn or all that kind of stuff, it resets. Like they've spent cards and mana and stuff in the early game on something that you've just negated the advantage of, right? It's kind of equivalent to like you've committed a whole bunch of resources to the board to develop like a board full of mana rocks and somebody like meltdowns you or something like that, you know?
Yeah.
It's like you spent cards and mana developing and time developing this stuff, and somebody's just come in and said, nope, that didn't matter, you know?
Right. Mm-hmm.
That card needs to see more play Meltdown in this
I do
artifact.
like Meltdown.
I play it in
Meltdown too.
I play it in a Pet Cemetery.
All right. So since you got into, you're now I would say a very large pillar in the community. What would be some of the resources you use now, as you would tell other players to use, new or also established?
Yeah, like, so I know a lot of people point new players to the decklist database. I think that there's like a missing step in between being a new player and looking at the decklist database, though. Because I think, especially when players come from other formats, card evaluation is a really tough skill to develop because it's format contextual, right? And this is, I always say, this is like why I'm a terrible drafter, okay?
Yeah,
is because
me
like
too.
in a cube environment, in a limited environment or whatever, I'll pick up like a pack that has like a 5 mana instant speed unconditional removal spell in it, and I'll be like, this card sucks, and I'll pass it, right? Because like I'm assessing it in the context of all of the spells that have ever been released in the history of the game.
In the context of Swords to Plowshares and Assassin's Trophy.
Right. Like I would never play this in a deck. That's what I think of, like my gut feeling when I see that card. And I can't I'm sure I could unlearn it, but that's like my gut reaction to it.
Right.
I think that a lot of players, especially from other formats, will look at stuff and don't understand why certain things are good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's really tough because like, I know a buddy of mine who plays a lot of like Azorius control in Modern and other formats. He's like, I want to play a hard control deck in EDH. And I'm like, man, hard control is a tough row to hoe in EDH. Like, it's like, if you want to one for one yourself and then watch somebody win while you're hellbent, like Azorius hard control is the best way to do that.
Oh yeah, I call that bleeding out slowly.
Yeah, like you're going to watch somebody win and you will have 0 cards in hand and just watch somebody else do what you want to do.
It's like, because you keep pulling the tourniquet back off and you just...
Yeah. And so it's like that's the kind of thing that a lot of other players, especially when they bring that kind of baggage in from other formats, they just like assume that there's just an analog that you can play. Because you can play Azorius Control in Modern, you can play Azorius Control in Legacy, you can do whatever you want, you know? But you come to EDH and like you've now changed the calculation for card advantage, and it just doesn't work that way, you know?
No.
I kind of am of the opinion that all CDH decks are tempo decks.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely they are.
Because there's no way to really hard lock 3 opponents that isn't just a combo. You know what I'm saying?
And I mean, not as long as like Cyclonic Rift exists, but
yeah.
You know, I Cobblepot mentioned this a little while ago. He said that Cyclonic Rift being banned would be the biggest gift to the CDH stacks community, and like I find it hard to disagree with him. He's right.
Yeah, please don't ban that.
But have you met a card and a commander called Niv Mizzet Peru? I don't know.
Ooh.
I don't know. I think hard control is the thing, and I think Niv does it.
But yeah, they like, you need something like Niv, or you need like Rush Me or something like that. Something that like just consistently draws you cards.
Even then, you're really just playing Niv like Delver. Like you just play him and you're just making sure he sticks till you kill everybody.
I mean, but isn't that control in a nutshell?
No, because like hard control is you just like that's more of like what tempo decks are. More like think of like Rug Delver. Like that's what Rug Delver does. That's
like I always think of Rug Delver, like Delver type decks, as like kicking the can down the road so that it's like just beyond reach until you can do something, right? So like, whereas like a control deck seeks to just totally stifle anything that's going on, and that might be a totally meaningless distinction.
Yeah,
but
no,
that's
I
just
get
like
you.
how I keep them sorted in my head.
Yeah,
Is that tempo is like I'll just put off, like, you're gonna win next turn. I'm gonna see if I can make that one more turn, and then the next turn you're gonna do it again. Next turn you're gonna do it again. But whereas control decks are more just like, I'm gonna stop you from doing anything.
I hard lock it.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with the mindset of 60 card control or 1v1 control is you control in 1v1 is you will have no fun. Absolutely no fun.
Right.
Versus because you're playing against 3 other players, you have to pick and choose what you allow. Like,
yeah,
okay.
And that's like the mindset that they have to break, you know?
Yeah.
So like, I think it's weird to, like, if somebody's coming in from Modern and they're like, I want a control deck, what should I play that's hard control? And then like somebody's going to swoop in, if this is on Reddit or whatever, somebody's going to swoop in and be like, well, you should play like, I don't know, like what's a hard control deck that people often play, like Grand Arbiter or Lavinia or something like that.
Yeah.
And they'll say that, like, because it's the closest analog. But it's they kind of get recommended that without the context that, like, you have to play it differently and you have to assess cards differently.
Yeah,
and like
it's really, you're just playing it like a Delver deck.
Yeah. So like I don't know. I always find it weird to turn people to the decklist database immediately because I don't know that necessarily that there's enough context there to help people understand what they're looking at. I think that like there's a lot of really good fundamental stuff. Like Playing with Power did their like what is CDH series that I really like. There's one of the things. So interestingly enough, a lot of the resources that I point people to are not necessarily like educational resources. They're more like they're more social resources, and I have like specific reasons for doing this. But I point people to Play to Win because I love Play to Win, and I think it's the most entertaining CDH gameplay. Period. I really enjoy their stuff. But I kind of point people to that because it's like fast paced. It captures like the feeling of a game properly. They explain the rationale behind their actions and that kind of stuff. And I tell people, like, just go watch some CDH gameplay, see if it's something that excites you, right? Because like it's a big investment to make if you're buying cards, of course.
Correct.
If you're buying cards, like, it's a big investment to make if you're like not sure you're gonna like it. So go and watch the stuff that I would consider to be exciting CDH gameplay. And then if like you like still think that it's something you want to get into, then start looking at deck lists and say like, what made this deck better than that deck in this game? Or like, what made this a favored matchup? And then you can start looking at matchups and start reading primers and all that kind of stuff. And then you have a little bit of context because you kind of see what decks do. That's kind of like my starting point if somebody wanted to get into it.
You're not going in blind.
Yeah.
That's great. I think that's very good. That's a very good advice to people who are trying to get into it. Our next question is, when you got into, I guess I want to say, was it subreddit before Discord? When you got into the CDH community, did you get in there with an expectation? Was there an expectation when you got into it? Did you expect something, or was your expectation met?
It was, I definitely went in with different expectations. And I've done this, actually, I did this in Modern once too, and I did exactly the same thing. I approached it in the same way and pretty much got met with the exact same response. And it was essentially, I brought in a deck that like wouldn't be considered a CDH deck. And like the fundamentals of the deck were pretty solid, but I hadn't really considered the meta or like the decks that I might end up playing it against if I played in blind pods, which I wasn't at the time. And this is part of why I didn't. So I said, hey, I'm having a lot of luck with this deck. Here's the deck list. What suggestions do you guys have for me and all that kind of thing. In Modern, it was my I got shredded. The first comment on the deck list was, I'm surprised this has ever won a game. But my Nin list, I built it by watching Brian Weissman's content, his 1v1 no banlist commander or like online banlist commander. I watched a lot of Brian Weissman and watched him just dominate people with this Nin deck. And it was the same thing. It was like just crush people in card advantage, like just 1-for-1 people until both of your hands are empty, then activate Nin, X = 5, draw 5 cards, and it's like a Sphinx's Rev in the command zone, right? Like it's a deck in 1v1.
Yeah, totally.
And yeah, anyway, so I brought it and I'm like, this is really heavily inspired by this. I've made some changes for multiplayer and all that kind of stuff. But I was playing all the cards that he was playing that are devastating in 1v1, but sucked in 4-player, like Amnesia, where it's like that will end a game in 1v1.
What does Amnesia do?
It's nothing relevant. It's an expensive mind twist, basically.
Okay, that's all I needed to know.
It's not like mind twist. It's hang on. Yeah. It's a 6-mana sorcery. Target player reveals their hand and discards all non-land cards.
Oh, okay.
It's three blue.
Yep, that'll do it.
And yeah, like in 1v1, that's devastating.
Yeah.
If you resolve that spell, the game's over.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was playing cards like that, and because they were kind of relics of this 1v1 list, and yeah, and somebody says to me, yeah, I'm surprised this has ever won a game. And I'm like, okay, well, the piece that I was missing, obviously, is that CEDH is very heavily built on predicting what your opponents are going to bring to the table, and then having a meaningful way to counter that. Not like counter spell that, but like to play against it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so when you go into, and I think this is a pretty common experience for a lot of newer players, is they'll come into the CDH subreddit or whatever, and they'll say, hey, I'm playing this, Narset deck or whatever that is playing really well in my play group. How do I knock it up to the next level? And what they're met with is play something different,
Yes.
And
except Narset's on the DB now.
Is it really? Oh, that's
Sean
cool.
got it on there, yeah.
And so like a lot of people will bring that kind of thing forward, and they'll say like, hey, I'm playing this list. It's playing really well in my play group. And what's assumed, because the only thing anybody can assume on the internet is that you're playing with strangers, right?
Right.
But like in my example, I really wasn't playing with strangers. I was playing it with the same 3 people every week.
Right. So like,
and help teching against my play group.
So and that's a lot of what we do on the Budget Brews Discord, is like people will come in and want that, and they're a lot of times they're actually just looking for a list to go scurry off with, and then they get met with the barrage of questions like, what is your meta? What's the average budget of what your decks you're playing against? What are the colors? Like this whole like list of stuff, and they're like, I just want something I can copy and paste, and it's like, but that's not going to be helpful.
No, that's not it.
So that's why I think this is a really interesting question, because I think a lot of people bring in a lot of different expectations. Like they could just be looking for a list to copy and paste or whatever and send it off to make playing cards or whatever. And like some people are looking for, I really like this list, but it needs a couple tweaks because it's not doing what I want it to do. And some people are like, what's the best deck that I could possibly bring to this group? And so like my expectations were definitely like, I wanted help tweaking it, or I wanted like feedback on whether I'm doing the right things to play against my play group. And what I got was like, if you want to play against the online meta, this is what you have to do. And that involved playing something else. Like I got a lot of, you should play Thrasios instead of Nin. And, but I wasn't playing it like a straight race to combo deck, like a lot of Thrasios players were at the time.
Right.
Because they were playing like, Dramatic Reversal, Isochron Scepter.
Yeah, it was a lot of CST,
kind of stuff, right?
And then with Paradox Engine at the time, I think.
Yeah, and so I really I had that in my deck, but mine was more of a control deck, so I was looking for more incremental card advantage and not just like an infinite outlet in the command zone.
Yeah,
right. And so yeah, like when you look at that, like the rate on Thrasios is 4 mana per card, but the rate on Nin is like 2+ X and draw X cards, right? So
right. But you gotta have Nin. You need like a mana battery.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he kills himself every time.
Yep. Which is like not generally a huge problem. I actually still really like the way that Nin plays. And Red has so many more toys that like I've built a new version of the deck.
Funny,
and it's still not Nin, like tier 1 or whatever. But
so Nin's a 2 CMC commander. So he turns on SWAT and he turns on Fierce real easy, and you get to play Breach.
And you get to play Breach, and you get to play Dockside Extortionist, and you get to play tons of Mana Rocks and like Whir of Invention. You get to play Transmute Artifact if you wanted to. Yeah, there's like a lot of good stuff going on with that. But it seems like every time I build the deck these days, it kind of just ends up being like a worse version of something else. Because like if you're playing lots of like ritual mana acceleration,
Yeah.
It's a real big gamble to go all in on Nin to try and draw a bunch of cards because somebody's just gonna like either swat Nin's activation to their own creature and steal all your card draw.
Right.
That's not cool.
Yeah.
Or misdirect
you just,
it. Yeah.
yeah, or you get misdirected, or you get like abraded or something like that, and you just end up paying like 9 mana to do nothing. But
And then and then you put sadness on the stack.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing
will resolve.
Yeah, and the other thing with Nin is you have to get him. You have to run him out, and then like he doesn't have haste. He doesn't protect himself. Like
yeah. And so like that's the kind of thing where you end up having to play cards like Swift with Boots and stuff like that, where you're like, I don't really want to play this, but if I don't play it, I'm just gonna get punished, you know?
Right.
But
no, that is very true. It's just like a lot of commander centric decks you like that just die to. I mean, like any creature that's removal, you have to have a way to protect them. Like a lot of people when they first get into Zur, they're like, when I play Zur, it dies immediately. How do I stop this? Like, you need to when you play Zur, first don't tap out for Zur. Have someone.
First of all, don't play Zur. Like when I say don't play Zur, I don't mean don't play the deck. I mean like if you're casting Zur, something has gone wrong.
yes. That is not the game plan. The game plan is, even though he is your game plan, you need a way for either to give him haste, either to make sure when you play him, have interaction in hand. You just have to make sure you can protect him. A lot of people also ask me that question on Getrog. When you play Getrog, why does it die immediately? Because people are afraid of what Getrog does. And you have to make sure you either have a silver tongue where you can politics your table.
Yeah, silver tongue or a silver bullet.
Silver bullet, something. You have to have something. All right, so we're going to move on to our next question. And you kind of hinted on it with the question before, where you came in with this deck and you were met with hostility. So what advice would you give for experienced players when someone new come into the format? What are some of the negativity we should get rid of towards other players, newer players?
Big on this question. I think that this is a question we should be asking ourselves more frequently and louder. Is that when somebody comes to you with a deck, the best advice that I've ever been given was ask somebody what do they want. You know, like when they say, okay, can I get feedback on my deck? Okay, well, what kind of feedback are you looking for? Like, do you want to make this deck better? Do you want to make it faster? Do you want to make it go off a turn earlier? Do you want to make it more resilient to counter magic? Do you want to know like about the lore behind your cards because you only want to play, cards that were printed on or that exist on the same plane or whatever? And that like when I'm talking about EDH in general,
right?
But ask people what their goals are. What will make them happy? Will their deck being a turn faster make them happy? Because if that's not what they're looking for, then don't give them feedback that's aimed to do that,
Be correct.
Usually my first question is, are you trying to make a CDH deck, or are you trying to optimize a non-CDH deck?
Yeah. Well, and like what are your goals, right? Like what is going to make you walk away from a game happy? Is that just like, I just want to be competitive enough that I'm not going to get blown out? That's a totally different question.
Yeah.
Than like, I'm preparing for a tournament.
That. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very true.
Yeah. So like, I would say that that's the first thing, is that when somebody says like, can you give me feedback, or like, this is my experience, like, don't go in trying to fix it, assuming that there's only one way to fix it, right? Because there's a lot of different objectives that people have when they're playing Magic. And like, it can be really easy to think like, oh, well, because with the CDH community, the only thing we care about is winning. I think that actually pretty objectively, that's not true. And I don't know when, I don't know when you plan on bringing up Hullbreacher, but I think that a lot of the reaction from the CDH community to Hullbreacher's banning has been pretty positive, at least from what I've seen.
Yes.
And I think that that's actually a pretty good indication that winning is not the only thing that matters in CDH. If when you look at a lot of CDH players and they're like, great, I hate it when people win that way, and I don't find it interesting when I win that way. If winning is the only thing that matters, then it doesn't matter what cards you use to win, right?
No, it doesn't.
Well, and I mean, just given the plethora of fringe strategies, meta buster strategies, I mean, objectively, any deck that's not playing Turbo Nas and Dockside and Oracle is already I'm not saying ostensibly suboptimal, but obviously not going with the conventional wisdom of what is the best position.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, is the fact that the decklist database? How many decks do you think are on the decklist database? Do you know?
I have no idea.
A couple hundred,
at least
or
70. Yeah, at least 70.
Well,
let's even if we say it's 70, right?
Right.
Even if we say it's 70, right? Like, let's say we list off the top 5 decks in the format, and it literally doesn't matter what they are, right?
No.
The fact that people are still playing 6 through 70,
right,
enough that they ended up on a database of decks that you should reasonably expect to see at an average CDH table, right? The fact that those decks exist and are played, despite being objectively worse than options 1 through 5, even 1 through 10, even 1 through 20. You know,
I was gonna say, yeah, because a lot of times 5 through 20 are decks designed to attack.
Yeah.
But
I mean, people want to play the decks that they enjoy playing, and the reasons that they have for enjoying them are vastly different from player to player, right? I might like Godo because I started playing in Kamigawa and I just like Godo, I mean, there could be a ton of reasons why you want to do that. I like playing Nin just because it plays a little bit different than Thrasios and nobody plays Nin,
You and Metal Legs, good sir, should talk about Nin.
Yep. We have.
Nin. Oh, you have? Okay, good.
Oh yeah, I've represented the Nin love on the Mystic Remoras in the past.
Yeah, he loves Nin.
Talking about love of a deck, first love, I had a very strong love for Omnath, Angry Jelly Bean, and Tim and I and Big Richie built Omnath as competitively as we could.
It's like a high power, yeah.
And a high power, it doesn't matter what level it was. I just wanted to play Omnath because that's what I started playing Magic was. And I got so much hate about how bad the deck was, how horrible the deck was. And I'm like, you know what? I haven't had this much fun playing Magic in 2 years. I just want to play lands. And I want to make 5/5s with my lands. And I want to get someone with it. That's all.
you know my Bears and Cars list?
Yeah.
Again, this is objectively not the best thing you could be doing in Commander, right? But oh man, did I just want to slam some people with some vehicles? Did I just want to toss a Calm Ball and I don't know, Leonin Arbiter in Sky Sovereign console flagship and just donk people with Sky Sovereign,
Right.
Because I think what a lot of people mistake for motivation to win is actually motivation for a challenging and satisfying win, doing something that they want to do,
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the conversations I'll have with people, especially when I'm critiquing a deck, is that it's not a matter of you can't play a card, you just need to have a purpose for it. Especially from a CDH perspective, one of the main tenets is optimization. You can play Aloro, you just need why, and it needs to be reasonable and
Rebel has talked about this quite a bit too, and I definitely agree. I think that it's important to get both halves of this sentence that I'm about to say, but CDH is about being aware of what you're going to come up against and intentionally building in a good faith way to interact with it,
Okay.
And I know I've talked to Nathan, Nathan Jones, about this quite a bit. He says a lot of people kind of miss the second half, which is it's not just enough to know what you're coming up against. You also have to make a good faith effort to build against it,
Right.
But if you know full well that you're going to come into a meta that's full of Thoracle and all that kind of stuff, the deck that you build, whatever it is, a good faith effort to build is going to have some way of interacting early. it's going to have some way of maybe threatening a win early or stopping Thoracle early. And then if you're playing that, then like the rest of it, you know, does it have to be the best thing in the format to be considered CEDH? No, but like if you've got a game plan to play against Thoracle and you like genuinely and honestly and like non-ignorantly, I'm like not sure how to say that, but like if you're going in eyes open and you're making a good,
you have intent, you have
effort,
purpose, you have
you're building
doing
it with intention,
forethought,
you know,
with intention,
and like then it doesn't really matter if you're
rigorously
playing stuff that's not tier 1 or tier 0 or whatever.
well, like
you know?
rigorously honest intention, like, you know,
Right.
like is this at that bar, like not just like one of the big pitfalls I always see is like people want to do something because they want to, not because it's reasonable or good or it attacks a meta in a certain way. You know what I mean? And it's not that you can't do that, but what is your context with it? Like what you know what I mean?
And I think that's like a question that a lot of the CDH content creation community is kind of grappling with, is that like you need some amount of variety to be entertaining. Whether or not it's like an accurate description of the CDH meta, you need a little bit of variety, because like the same thing over and over and over again, even if it is a good representation of CDH, is boring.
People don't want to watch a 4-way Turbo Nosmir ever.
Yeah, exactly. Like, but not only like a 4-way Turbo Nosmir, but think about doing that once a week for a year. Like putting out a video of that. Like people lose interest really quick.
After about the first video.
Yeah. And so like that's when you get the point where a lot of CDH content creators will shake it up a little bit. They'll bring in some fringe decks. They'll, you know, I always liked like we always got a lot of comments on our content saying like, why are you playing this fringe deck against this like meta or like pod full of meta decks? And it's like, honestly, because I wanted to see how it performed. I'm always really curious about the gap between like these fringe and the top end decks. And like you can talk about it all you want, but like play it. Those fringe decks win sometimes. It doesn't mean that they're the best thing in the world.
I mean,
they do win.
I would have just said because people like watching it.
Yeah.
Like that. I mean, at the end of the day, like what people want to watch and what people want to like, and what people will play in tournaments are two different things.
Oh yeah. Just ask golf. I love playing golf. You could not pay me to watch golf.
No.
So maybe I should have started off this question because we kind of hit off a lot of what CEDH is. So do you believe CEDH is a mindset, or do you believe CEDH is a card pool?
I think it's a mindset. I think that it doesn't do us any favors. So I would preface this by like with a whole bunch of asterisks, is that I think it's a mindset because if you call it a card pool, what you end up with is what you've got. So if you say like CEDH is this pool of like, I don't know, 250 cards or whatever, like Squirrel Mob's like analysis says it is, right?
Right.
The problem is it really discounts innovation, and it not only does it discount innovation, it discourages people from being receptive to innovation. So one of the things is that like if you're always scared of being wrong, you'll never produce anything original that has value, right?
Right.
You got to take a chance on something new. And a lot of the time, this is also coupled with the concept that Magic players are notoriously bad at assessing cards before they've played them. And we kind of talked about this earlier, where you look at a CEDH deck and you're like, well, why are you playing this card? Or the same reason why I might look at a constructed standard deck and be like, what is this even doing? You know?
Right.
It's the same reason why people came to the rules committee and said, like, when Theros Reborn or Theros whatever Beyond Death was spoiled, and people were like, you need to ban Nyx Bloom Ancient because it's so busted. It's because they've never like played with this card before. There were tons of people that wanted Nyx Bloom Ancient banned.
What? Really?
Right? Yeah. It's like it's the easiest thing to look back on it in hindsight and be like, obviously this is not a problem. It's played in like 0.1% of EDH decks. Like nobody plays this card, let alone it being game breaking.
I mean, and
so but it's because people look at these cards and they get worked up and they like imagine these best case scenarios, but they don't imagine it's like all these human biases, right? It's like recency bias, it's severity bias, it's all that kind of stuff.
I can hear the sleigh bells are ringing as we go to Magic Christmas Land right now.
Exactly, but they don't look at the like 10,000 games that they'll play where this card's just sitting in their hand doing nothing, or they cast it once and it gets removed and does nothing.
Or making 14 mana and they got nothing to pump it into because they're not playing
Right.
Axios.
Yeah, or because they spent all their cards to ramp up to 7 so that they could cast it.
That was a joke,
So,
by the way.
They like, I don't know, like, so when players are notoriously bad at assessing cards, and this is myself included, by the way, this is not me saying I'm a better player than everybody else.
Right.
But when you look at new cards, it can be difficult to imagine a world unless you're an extremely talented deck builder. And there are some out there, right? Like Cobblepot is an innovator. He's very creative and he's very like tight in his card assessment. He's innovated a whole lot of brand new
He
EDH
does
decks in
innovate.
the format. He innovates quite a bit.
Yeah, but sometimes his vision does not match up to reality.
Yeah.
But
that's
you
possible
don't
too.
but if you don't do that, then you don't get those gems, right? Like we talked about.
We figure out what's good by trying a bunch of things and then crossing out all the stuff that's not good, right? Like that's the best way to arrive at what's good. And if you approach it with this like dogmatic perspective where you're like, this is good and everything outside of it is bad, when somebody comes to you with a new idea that's like, this is good, it conditions people to say, well, that's not this. Go to the deck list database and say, pick one of those decks because they've got to figure it out.
And that's a thing with the community itself also. That's a thing that I believe a lot of the established players do towards like things that, I want to test this card. And they completely demolish you, even if you have a solid argument of why you should test this card. Like, there's just a better card that does it. It doesn't matter if there's a better card that does it. Does it fit the strategy that I want to play it in? And that's the thing. So it's like, a lot of people will just say like it's a card pool, but I totally agree that this is a mindset, and we should get away from that type of hostility towards players who want to brew a new deck, want to try new cards, and let them try it. As long as you can, state that if you try this card and this card is bad in this strategy, and you can move on from it.
Yeah,
I think that is the key point towards it. But
let's
just get rid of that.
Then.
Yeah, let's get rid of the idea of, oh no, this card is bad and you should only play this card. I see it happen a lot.
It involves quite a bit of humility too, right? Like to admit to yourself and to other people like that you don't have it all figured out. That like, you know what, if you want to try something and see how it plays, you should try it, you know?
Right,
like,
you should try it.
You're going to understand this better if you try it and it doesn't work than if I tell you that it's bad.
Right.
Right.
You just need to be willing and able to objectively realize that. Like
Like if you actually want to get good at this game and get good at deck building, you have to try things and see how they work.
Yeah, just a lot of people don't have that objectivity. They just get those rose-colored glasses on and they just keep tunneling.
Yeah, and I mean, some people are not in it for that too, right? Like one thing that you learn when you talk to EDH players is that some EDH players don't even like deck building, you know? Some people just want to grab a list and they like playing the game, but they don't like building the decks.
Right.
And so like that's totally valid as well, right? Like if you just want a deck, there's plenty of decks out there. If you want a deck, I can point you to one. But if you want to like be a good deck builder, you're not going to learn that by me telling you what to play.
No. Trial and error.
Yeah.
A lot of bad decks have to be brewed before you find a good one.
Yep.
Like I'm really good with mana bases, but I can't tell anybody how to build a good mana base. Like really, I can just tell you to swap these cards out and why, and it'll make sense to you. But like like to disseminate that knowledge is, I don't know.
Yeah. So usually the way that I like to approach that kind of thing is like, I don't like, for the decks that I've brewed, I don't like being an authority on those decks. And this has been with a few decks. And most of the time these decks gain a little bit of popularity just on the back of like the fact that they're attached to a video that has a few thousand views on it, right? Like people are interested in it. So whatever, right? But I don't want people to come to me and say like, is this card good enough for Bears and Cars? And I'm like, I have no interest in being the authority on Bears and Cars. You should try that card. And if it works well, especially in a stacks deck,
let me know.
Yeah, like let me know. Like you tell me.
Right.
Because like I've never played that card before. I'm not going to tell you yes or no. I can like give you some general idea of how the deck plays, But like, if you want to take it off in your own direction, go nuts. I hope it's better than mine.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
No, that is awesome. But so what is your current meta like, and how do you feel like? What do you think the current state of EDH and CEDH is? And even with the reset banning, what do you think the current state of, or the current health of EDH and CEDH is?
I'm playing a lot less CEDH lately and a lot more like casual EDH lately. Mostly because my playgroup, we haven't really been able to get together to play. Like Canada's several months behind the US, or was at one point in terms of safe gathering.
Mhm.
So now that we're kind of safe, we were actually able to record a game about a week and a half ago. We're actually like able to play some Magic again in person, which is nice. We didn't really like the online thing. That's just like my preference.
Right.
I'm glad it was there, and I'm glad that I was able to get some games in with people that I want to play with and whatnot. But like,
Yeah,
it's a different
webcam's not for
experience,
everybody.
you know.
Yeah.
Like I'll take in person over webcam every day of the week, and I'm super grateful that I've been able to like get games in with people that I want to get games in with.
Mm-hmm.
But like,
Right.
I would say my regular play group right now is with Olivia Gobert Hicks and Jeremy Knoll, and their sort of play group. So I like hop on their streams occasionally and whatnot, but that's sort of the most Magic that I've been playing during quarantine.
Okay.
In my local play group, Bill is kind of like, I'm not going to say he's on the way out of Magic, but he's definitely lower on Magic than he has been in the past.
Well, some of that's probably accessibility right now.
Yeah. Elliot has like been keeping up with things. He's like updating his decks and stuff like that. He just hasn't been playing. Some of this might pick up when we're actually able to play in person.
Right.
Yeah.
In terms of the state of the EDH community at large, I think that EDH is in a really good place right now. It's good to see people, like one thing that happened this past weekend, like we're filming this on July 18th.
Yep.
One thing that happened this past weekend was people with Adventures in the Forgotten Realms pre-release, and I'm seeing like people posting their sealed pools and stuff like that. It feels like Magic again, you know?
Yeah, it's new.
You didn't have that for Strixhaven, you know? You didn't really have that for
No.
Ikoria. Like all these decks or all these sets have come and gone, and like I didn't go to pre-release in 2021 or 2020.
No, everybody just picked up a kit and bounced, or bought singles, or went to.
But
NPC
it's like
and printed.
you see people getting excited about Magic again, and like I feel like the attitude is maybe it's just like my corner of the internet, but the attitude feels lighter. It feels like there are less people complaining about dumb stuff online.
It has quieted down, hasn't it?
Right? It has. And I have a feeling it's because instead of complaining online, people are just playing Magic.
Well, and they're
Yeah.
in person, so they're
Yeah.
personality conflicts aren't as big of a deal face to face as they are over the keyboard.
Yeah, I think people are a little bit less willing to push things that they shouldn't push. Taking it one step further than they should take it when they're in
That's
person.
true. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that is true.
Very true.
I think that is we have had some. This was a pretty good conversation. What projects are you working on right now? Any new brews? Any new
boy.
thing coming out?
What do I got going on right now? So we are getting ready to post our first gameplay video, our first in-person gameplay video since November of last year.
All right.
That's coming out in like just a little over 2 weeks. So that's really exciting.
Nice.
I've got like my own interview series going on where I'm interviewing all sorts of people about all sorts of different things. I call it Spike on the Mic. It's
I listen to that a lot. I listen to most of my stuff offline because of where I work.
Oh yeah.
So anything that I can download and take with me, it's been. I listen to those. They're great.
Yeah,
I love your
recently, like
about
originally,
power
it was a video essay series where I would just write like 5 pages on a single topic and just read it into the microphone.
Mm-hmm.
But now I've kind of expanded it. I've scaled back the video essay part of it and incorporated interviews with people that have like relevant thoughts on the topic.
Mm-hmm.
So we can kind of like dig into something and explore it over the course of half an hour.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And I think it's going well.
Yeah, it is. It's really good.
That also kind of helped me to kind of direct what I'm doing, what we're doing here at the moment with what you were doing with that.
Yeah.
I just believe that everyone have their own opinions, and if we can all come together and talk about their opinions and bring some of the negativity we have to light, I think that's the only way you can kill the bad habits.
Yeah, well, actually, that is a really good point, and that's like I might even do a spike on the mic about that soon. But there's a tendency online when people like express themselves when they say like I have this idea, and then somebody else will come in and say that idea is bad, and people will like internalize that and say like that they're saying that I'm bad, and then they kind of dig in and they say, well, I know I'm not bad, so this idea must be not bad as well, and then they like dig in and butt heads and all that kind of stuff. And I think that there's like an opportunity for us to change the way that we talk about things that we're passionate about, where like, you know, number one, we don't attack a person as being bad because an idea that they had is bad, but also that when somebody attacks an idea that we have, that we don't take it as like an indication that you're bad as a person. Right.
Yeah.
And like, I think that that's quite common when we talk about the things that we're passionate about, like
also
especially in Magic, when we say like you know, you shouldn't play stacks because people that play stacks don't have friends, or they make like value judgments about you as a player because of your playstyle preferences, right?
Trolling, just being
it's just like negative, you know.
Like,
or we say like I would, you know, I don't play stacks because I like having fun. I hate that. Like since when is it a dichotomy? Like why do we put playstyle preference that's like valid on the one hand and then fun on the other hand, and we say you have to choose between one or the other? It's a ridiculous dichotomy, right?
Now I will often say I don't play stacks because I play stacks poorly, thus nobody has fun.
Yeah. that's a totally different story.
I'm just saying, but it brings it to a little more light than just
exactly. And like you have to be good at stacks to like enjoy it.
You gotta be,
it's hard.
Really...
I mean, the other thing is that it's hard to get good at playing stacks.
I think is so. My hot take for all the NSL commentating I've done and all of that is I'm the number one guy that says stacks is bad. But what I always say is stacks is hard in multiplayer.
Right.
Stacks is easier in 1v1 because you're just shutting out one player. Stacks is hard in multiplayer.
Yep.
And that's why people, I don't believe if you're coming in as a new player, you should never touch stacks.
It's hard. It's not even just hard, but it's also hard to learn. Like
yes.
Well, and the other problem with it is like while you're learning it, like you're just RNGing who wins, and all the games are long and drug out, and they just drag, and then so and that's why it gets the bad rap.
It's like, and also I feel like I've seen some people who play stacks and they get actually angry when they lose the game. I'm like, if you don't want to commit 2.5, 3 hours to a game to lose to someone else's decision, don't play stacks.
Yeah.
Because that is going to happen a lot.
That's why I stopped playing Thar.
That is going to happen a lot.
The way that we play about the way that we talk about this stuff, we have to like, first of all, accept the fact that it's a game and like it should be fun. And if it's not fun, you shouldn't be playing the game. That's the first thing. But also, like, if somebody is playing the game, you can assume that their intent is to have fun, right?
Right.
Like, at the very least, their intent is to have fun. It's a game, you know?
It's a game, yeah.
And so, like, I don't like the idea of attaching, like, value judgments to people.
No, you shouldn't.
To say, like, you know, you came into this game with the intention of making everybody miserable. Well, no, that's like not anybody's intention when playing Magic, even stacks players, you know?
Right.
No.
There might be like an outlier here or there where it's like somebody's got a chip on their shoulder.
There's some people that just want to make people miserable. Like I literally get asked that, I want to build a deck to annoy my brother or something like that.
But that's fine. I mean, if it brings joy to you to see others in misery, it's still your fun, right? It's still your enjoyment at the end of the day.
But we've got to like move away from the idea that like that in order to passionately talk about our hobbies,
Right.
that we have to be like dunking on people all the time, or that we have to like
Yeah.
we have to like toss out hot takes because that's what gets engagement or whatever, you know, like
Right.
there's really good and positive and constructive ways to talk about our hobbies
There is.
that don't involve tearing people down, you know.
Right. Or
And,
sensationalism. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, it doesn't get the clicks. I know. Like my Spike on the Mic stuff is never going to perform as well as our gameplay
Dude,
stuff. I
This
resign
channel
myself to
doesn't
that.
get clicks, but it's good
Yeah.
info to have out.
For sure. For sure.
We will get the
and, like,
clicks. Listen, positivity, Tim. We'll get
It
there.
will.
I mean, we get
That's
a
the thing.
reasonable amount, but I mean, at the end of the day, it's more about getting the info out than anything.
Yeah. And I mean, you know what? If you keep making good stuff and you enjoy it, then people will come. They'll see that.
Yep.
It's yeah. I know that sounds like some like cosmic, you know, the secret.
I get what you're saying, though.
It
Does sound like some shit Bruce Lee would say right before he hits you with a nunchuck, but
Yeah.
One day you will be better. Well, yeah, some people joke.
like what?
But that is awesome. So any other topics we wish to talk on? Anything else?
No, well, actually, I did kind of want to talk to you guys and ask, what did you think
Okay.
of the hull breacher banning? That is something that's like really hot topic
Go
in the
ahead.
community right now.
Go ahead, Tim.
You want my take on
Yeah,
Hull Breacher? It's the most medium take ever.
Okay.
Sure.
I play whatever
for it.
card pool is legal in whatever format I play in.
Mm-hmm.
That's it.
Yeah, that's it.
Oh my goodness, Tim. Let's try this again. What do you feel? How do you feel about how the banning of Hull Breacher affected you and the meta? Let's not say you. Or how did it affect the people you play with? How do you feel about it?
I mean, honestly, the fact that it had flash was ridiculous.
There you go.
I get that cards don't make it through. Like the amount of testing that the Wizards R&D department can do versus the general player population can do is like minuscule.
Mm-hmm.
But the fact that they gave it flash,
Yeah.
God,
I mean, there's like a bunch of things that you can like. It's sort of like one of these. You know that episode of The Simpsons where Homer goes back in time and sits on a bug, and then it's raining donuts in the future.
yeah,
Like there's a million little tiny things that you could have changed about Hull Breacher that would have made it totally fine. Like
Yeah.
you could have like given it additional color pips. You could have taken away flash. You could have made it so that it was a trigger and not a replacement effect. You could have made it so that like it didn't make treasures, or maybe only made one treasure.
it
You
triggered
could
once
have-
per turn or something.
Yeah, or like Notion Thief templating, or like where
Yeah.
you still get to draw one card.
Yeah,
Like
like
there's a million things that you could have done.
yeah, there is, but they just like,
Yeah.
it's like it's the same thing with Op Agent. It's like it's not so much the cards themselves, honestly. It's the play patterns that they incentivize.
Yeah, so like one thing, I was talking to Rachel Weeks about this, and she brought up something really good, and like I thought that this was really insightful. But a lot of the problematic, or the card design that the rules committee typically sees as problematic, is card design where like doing something to your opponent, a specific thing, gets like incentivized to the point where it becomes irresistible. You know?
Yeah.
So like Hull Breacher is a good example of that, where it's like, if you can make your opponents draw a ton of cards, and the easiest way to do that is by also discarding their cards.
Right.
The incentive to do that is treasures. It's not just that they have no cards in hand, it's that they have no cards in hand and you get paid, you know?
Right. It's like,
And like Turgrid, as an example, it's like if you can make everybody discard their hand with Dark Deal or whatever, like the upside is you get all of their stuff.
right.
Like it's not just that they have an empty hand. It's like it's not just a disadvantage for them, it's also a benefit for you. And they make
Yeah.
it to the point where it's so irresistible that it becomes really
cut out, you
ubiquitous,
cut out.
like Hull Breacher.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Oh,
That
my
last sentence you cut out.
Oh yeah, like they make it so attractive that it
Mm-hmm.
becomes ubiquitous because people are like they're chasing that benefit.
Right.
But
Yeah,
at the
this
same
shit-
time, they're like inflicting a particular play pattern on
Yeah. It's
people
just like
that
it like
aren't
just
necessarily
incentivizes you to yeet people.
Yeah.
Like so
Yeah.
hard. Like
Yeah, and if you look at that, like that's a pretty consistent thread through a lot of the cards in the ban list, is that people don't necessarily realize, and this is like Yeah, I can talk for hours about the role of the ban list. So tell me to shut up if you don't want to hear this. But
No,
Not
you're
all
fine.
night.
Go ahead.
Keep going.
it's like one of the consistent threads that goes through the role through the ban list is that players that don't necessarily have enough experience playing the format don't necessarily know the types of social situations that they can create by doing certain things.
hmm
And I would say that this goes beyond the ban list too, like things like king making, right? Like
hmm
a player might not understand going into a CEDH game that it's like BM to pact something on turn one with no plan to pay for the trigger, right? Like people don't know that instinctually. They kind of have to be
No.
told that like a lot of people
Right.
don't like that.
Because that's a legal play.
Yeah, it's a totally legal play. There's nothing against it in the rules of Magic. And this is another one of the reasons why I say that like there's a lot of motivations in CEDH beyond just winning, because pacting is a legal play. It's something that you could reasonably expect somebody to do. But it's something that's like frowned upon in the community that's not against the rules.
It'll get you a talking to in most online play groups.
For sure, right? And like for good reason. It creates a bad play experience.
Berm talking to. Like,
Yeah. And so like those are the types of things that the ban list and the philosophy document are trying to communicate to people, that like
Right.
if you're going in blind to a new play group or whatever, there's like certain things that will get people's back up, you know?
yeah.
Right.
And so like it's not the same thing in every play group, but there are
No.
a few overarching statements that you can make about EDH. Like a lot of people don't like mass land destruction. That's like not a controversial statement at all.
You know what's ironic about mass land destruction? Mass land destruction is frowned upon in every power level but CDH,
Mhm.
but it's not effective in CDH. So
Yeah, it's not
therefore,
good.
it's
That's why
ostensibly
it's not frowned upon. That's
Yeah.
exactly why
it's not frowned upon, but it's not effective either. So therefore, it's essentially the same result.
Yeah. So like there, if you were to like come up with a list of all of the things where you can say like this is a statement where that's like going to be true more than it's not true about CEDH, or like not CEDH, but just EDH in general.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like kind of what the ban list is intended to communicate to a player that doesn't have that experience, right?
Right.
So that they know that like, you know, Leovold might look really good because it's like, oh, it's going to draw me a whole bunch of cards, and like my opponents can't draw a bunch of cards. This looks great, right? I love playing blue and green and black, but they don't know that like when you bring it to a play group that you might like cause some eye rolls and stuff like that. So they don't want you to spend like $500 on a Leovold EDH deck and then bring it to an LGS and have people like roll their eyes and be rude to you because they, you know, because you don't know that most people don't like playing against Leovold.
Right.
So that's like kind of, it has been the intent in the past. I'm not necessarily saying that that's like what I agree with. It's just a fact of life. That's what it's historically been used for.
Yeah, that's
So
kind of their...
my views on Hullbreacher. My lovely views. I love that it's banned because the decks that I enjoy playing, it completely hoses. Tatiova turns, Niv Mizzet, Get Rog, and my newfound love Marwyn, because all I want to do in these decks is draw a lot of cards. No, did it make some strategies better? I enjoyed as a hate bear. I believe it was a very good hate bear. I think Grix's shell needed it because there wasn't a way for Grix's to control what their opponents drew.
Really?
Because
Notion Thief?
But here's the thing with Thief, though. Like, okay, Notion Thief was a good card, but you could still win through a Notion Thief to a point, right?
Just saying.
Two color pips is significant too, because it's like not online on turn one, right?
Right.
Like it's always the kind of thing where like turn one, like you're like, oh, I've got a couple mana rocks and a time twister in my hand. Like that's maybe a keepable opener because I'm like, I'm going to start up a couple mana, screw up everybody's mulligans.
Right.
And then like, you know that you're not going to get Notion Thief on turn one, or you can like have a pretty high degree of confidence that you're not going to get.
Yeah,
Notion
pretty
Thief.
good.
But if somebody opens like Island Mana Crypt, you're like, oh crap, now I can't play this time twister.
Because I don't want to get 21 treasures.
Island Fetch or Fetch Lane Crypt Path and
Yeah.
you're like, oh, okay. Now I need the axe on turn 1. Does my fetch resolve because of up agent? And they're like, oh, okay. You didn't hit my fetch. Okay, you definitely have up agent. And someone played the brainstorm, like, oh yeah, yeet you on the brainstorm. Like, how people were playing it was very, for those reasons, they leave a bad taste in their mouth. But if you play it for like, okay, there's a game where there's 2 resist studies or 2 resist studies a remora that each other player has. And I have a Hull Breacher. I would love to play that Hull Breacher.
Yeah.
Because I don't have a Risk study and I don't have a Mystic Remora. So how do I control the table from not just drowning me in card advantage? Hull Breacher.
Well, and that's what the card was designed to do. I actually had Sheldon and Glenn Jones being the lead commander designer at WotC. I had him on my show and asked him, like, what was going through your mind when you designed a card like Hull Breacher? And his response was like, the core conceit of Hull Breacher, like the idea behind it, is that we need meaningful ways to play against like either mass card draw or like large amounts of incremental card draw, like
card draw, yes,
Remora, right? And like if somebody like Blue Sun Zenith themselves for like 15 and you Hull Breacher them, like Glenn Jones says, like you're doing good work there, right? That's a good play.
Yeah, right? But like, why couldn't it have just been templated like Narset or had 2 blue pips or just anything?
So we're not talking about the design. The design was a problem.
But like the intent behind it is like, well, like you said, like Tatiova is a really good example. Or like, what's the Bant one? Bant Tatiova. Like Holland or Chulane.
Holland.
Yeah, right. Like those Simic like extra value commanders, like they draw a lot of cards, and you need meaningful ways to play against that. Right. That aren't just like Spirit of the Labyrinth, So like they're trying, but the downside is that they're also very easily weaponized with things like wheels, right? Like they can be turned into an offensive thing very easily.
If they would have given Spirit of the Labyrinth Flash,
that
would have been great.
Yep. There's like I think the writing is on the wall.
Yeah,
they're going to keep exploring this design space of like punishing mass card draw. They're going to try and do it in different ways. But I think that the message that they've received from both the community reaction to Hull Breacher and the subsequent ban, because this is one of the roles of the ban list, is to send a signal to research and development about what's not welcome in the format, about what is like not healthy or what is not like helpful, or what's not going to help bring new people into the format.
Yeah,
because I can tell you, if I my first ever commander deck that I built is Tatiova, and I go and try and draw a bunch of cards, and somebody Hull Breachers me and just is like, no, never mind, I'm going to make treasures instead of you drawing cards, I might be like, man, maybe this isn't the format for me.
This is not the format for me. No, it's not. Like when I saw Hull Breacher got printed, I'm like, well, here Get Rock just becomes a lot worse. And then it was Hull Breacher into Darcy Voidwalker. And I'm like, what are you doing? Are you just trying to strangle Graveyard and card draw at the same time?
And Darcy doesn't have Flash, so at least you can, like, it's telegraphed.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. Yeah. But I mean,
it doesn't just yeet you when you go. Like, they have to play it on their turn.
Yeah.
Honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see more designs that are kind of along these lines. I think that they're going to try and dial it in and see if they can come up with something that's like appropriate, that does that, And I think that's good. And like we were talking about with deck building, like it's kind of the same with them, right? Like if they're going to try and do something and create like something meaningful and original that solves a problem, like they're not going to get it right on the first try. They might, but probably not.
Right,
but they're going to make a couple things that don't work properly, right?
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, all that
innovation. I hope something else comes out with that, because I enjoy the way of stopping those mass card draw effects, where someone just run away with the game with a turn 1 risk study. So just for like a card that can do that, I would love for it to be printed. But let's just not add a Smothering Tide and a Notion Sieve together. Let's just not pair these two things.
Or make it Make it like Dimir or something. If it was like one black blue, again, it would not have been as much of a problem.
Yeah, there's a lot of
it
things
is.
they could have done that could have just made it
Like, one of the other reasons, the fact that it was just like 2 blue, it makes it so difficult, is that like when somebody cracked one in a Commander Legends deck or whatever, it's so easy to just windmill slam that into any blue deck, right?
Yes.
You make it Dimir, it's a lot harder for
It's
like a player that's like not as experienced. Is
yeah.
not going to be like, I already play a deck that this is going to be great in, because it's just literally any blue deck.
yeah, pitches the force of will, does everything.
It was like people were putting it in everything. Like there was an argument where people were building blue decks with Hull Breacher in it. I'm like, you're on no wheels. You're like, okay, my opponents play wheels. I'm like, is this the reason why you're playing Hull Breacher? Because your opponents play wheels? You're not even using it as a value engine for yourself. You're using it as just
a hate bear.
A hate bear. And I think that was how it intended to use. It was a hate bear, not just like a storm enabler. Like, since they got banned, I've seen multiple Notion Thief wheels where you draw 21 cards or 28 cards and they pass the turn.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yes, this is what it was intended to do. Because Notion Thief wheel doesn't end the game. And there was someone with the argument like, I would prefer 28 cards versus 7 cards and 21 mana. I'm like, no, give me 7 cards and 21 mana any day.
Yeah, well, and yeah, it's like there's a lot of different things that they could have done differently with it. But like I said, I think they're gonna explore that space more. Based on my conversation,
which is nice.
It sounds like that's going to happen.
Yeah,
because I think it is a niche that's like that needs to be filled. Like it's valuable space to explore. But I would also say like I find it interesting that like overwhelming attitude from the CDH community and like the rest of the CDH or the rest of the EDH community has been pretty positive. It sounds like most people didn't like playing this card, and that's not saying that like everybody didn't like or everybody liked it or everybody didn't like it, but just from the general reaction, it seemed pretty positive to me.
No, it was.
I think it was a good move. Personally,
I think like even though I'm generally like anti-ban in general, like overall, I would prefer they ban fewer cards than more. But even with this one, like my advice to the rules committee when they asked me like, what do you think of this? It was like, I don't think that we need to ban any cards right now because I think the format's in a pretty good place. But like, if you've decided that you are going to ban something, this is like a pretty good one to ban.
Right.
Like,
it's a good one to do.
If the decision is, yes, we're going to ban cards right now, like, I think Hull Breacher has to be the number one. If like just for overall impact of the entire format. I know a lot of people would argue with me and say Thassa's Oracle, but actually had a long conversation with Ryan from Playing with Power on his podcast just about Thassa's Oracle, if you're curious about my thoughts on that. But,
awesome. We should definitely plug that too. But I think a lot of people are saying Oracle is just warping, and I'm like, Oracle, you had to play some cards to enable it. Like, it wasn't just Oracle I win. And it also made like win conditions very boring. But at the end of the day, I don't. Is it correct to say it wasn't format warping? Like, I didn't go to my LGS and I saw someone win with Oracle. I didn't. It was like you're either playing competitive, high tier, or competitively to see an Oracle tainted back win card. Like, I didn't see that anywhere, and I think that was the end of the day.
The difference with Thassa's Oracle is, I think, if you were banning for competitive balance, then Thassa's Oracle might be something you look at. And I know, like, when a lot of people say I want you to ban Thassa's Oracle, what they're actually wanting is they want the format balanced for competitive play. And I think that the format actually probably looks considerably different if you actually try to ban it or try to balance it for competitive play.
Oh, it's a lot different. There won't be no Soul Ring, no Mox Diamond.
Yeah, like fast mana is not conducive to balanced play, right? What the goal of a balanced competitive ban list is to like highlight player skill as the primary determinant of winning the game, right? So like skilled players win more often than
Non-skilled
than
players.
like a random selection of players
Right.
if the format is balanced, right? That's the purpose of balancing it.
Mm-hmm.
So what you do is you have to look at the things that enable and enforce randomness in EDH and get rid of those things. And the randomness is typically like card variants, highlights, explosive early game plays.
Yep.
And like it's just every once in a while somebody's going to get an explosive early game play, and then they're the hands-on winner to win that game. It's like it's like getting dealt a pair of aces in poker, right? Like like yeah, skill plays into it, but every once in a while you just get dealt the nuts.
You get double,
So like a balanced competitive format doesn't look like what we see right now. It sure as hell doesn't have cards like Soul Ring in it.
No.
So a question, Dream, that you're on the committee. Would there be a world where a CDH ban list could be a thing and an EDH ban list be a thing? Could we separate the two? Would that be a possibility?
Yeah, it's like a big question. I definitely like, is it possible? Like 100% yes.
Okay.
I can say from experience that I would say most, if not all, of the CDH people who you think might be on a rules committee specifically designed for CDH, like the people that you would trust to run the format kind of thing, right?
Right.
Like the list of names is like, I could name them, but like there's no point really.
Right.
They don't want to do that. So that's the first stumbling block, is that the people that you would want to run it don't want to run it.
Don't want to do it. Yeah.
For a couple reasons. Number one is that they see the treatment of the current rules committee and they don't want to sign up for that. Number two is that it's a lot of work and it's not paid work. So like it's one thing to say like, yeah, we should, run a competitive format or whatever, but like it's a lot of work. Like if you're planning on basing bans and rules decisions on like empirical data, you're like collating tournament results, you're doing deck list analysis, kind of like what Scroll Mob's doing. But you're doing that like with every set and determining like what's good and what's not, and how does this change the format and all that kind of stuff. It's like it's pretty consuming.
The amount of data, it just isn't there to do that, even if you wanted to.
Yep.
Like,
so that's the other thing. This is the next thing is that people who split off from a format typically want to continue splitting off from formats, because when they don't like what's going on, they leave. And so like if I today were to say, I'm going to go and start my own CDH format, here's my ban list, come with me, right? People are going to say, you know what, this is great. We've been waiting for this forever. And then we all split off and we go our separate ways. And then in 2 months, when I do my first rules announcement, half the people disagree with me and they say, you know what, we're going to go and split off and do our own ban list, right? And that's what happened with 1v1. That's why you have French. That's why you have Leviathan. That's why you have MTGO 1v1. That's why you have like a dozen different 1v1 ban lists, is because every once in a while, the rules committee will do something that you don't like and then you leave and create your own format. And then half the people from that format break off and do their own format. And
keep subdividing.
Yeah, they keep subdividing.
That's just not healthy for the format itself, so I guess. Because you just keep dividing the same population. You're just getting smaller and smaller all the time.
Yeah.
And the other thing that happens is that there's a lot of people that will just simply not make the leap and will just keep playing whatever the most powerful stuff is in Commander.
Yeah.
And they just won't have
So that's the thing. Like to when we talk about like doing original things that have value, that's like the value portion of it, right? Is like when you're trying to convince people to do something or to follow you, or you're trying to like create something like that, it's got to solve a problem that people have, right? And so like normally there's like two kind of problems that people posit with EDH that they think that a format split might solve. The first one is, we've got pub stompers in EDH and we want to get rid of them. Because we want assholes out of our format, That's
not going to happen.
And it's not going to happen because those people don't self-identify as the assholes that are ruining EDH.
Yeah. They don't,
and they're not going to say like this new format is for me because I'm supposed to go and play with these other people. They're just going to keep showing up to F&M with their Xur deck and ruin people's night, right?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing. The second thing is that CEDH players want a format that's curated for competitive balance. And I'm not 100% convinced that most CEDH players actually want that, because there is an alternative that's like actually pretty balanced called Conquest. And it's like pretty good,
Yeah,
but it's not EDH.
Yeah.
And well, and the other thing is like, I mean, you could just look every time there's a new set, like Twitter is just exploded and everybody's just brewing all the new stuff. Like, and
Yeah,
like people don't like, they want it, like they want the most egregious stuff to be gone, but not not they don't want it to be like, they don't want Deathrite Shaman banned because it's unbalanced in the format or whatever.
And so like, that's the thing, is that I think a lot of CDH players actually play it because it's not balanced, you know? And when they're presented with a balanced environment, it's not as attractive to them because they can't do the busted stuff that they want to do. Like they want experiences that are more like a little while ago, like I went to a buddy's bachelor party and we played Powered Cube at his cabin.
Mm-hmm.
And I went like turn 1 Black Lotus, turn 1 or turn 2 like Mox Ruby or something like that. I like long story short, I curved Lingering Souls into Elishnorn. And
that works.
That's nuts, right? I had a Black Lotus and I used it to cast an Elishnorn. That's sick, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's the kind of stuff that I want to do. I want to like use powerful old Magic cards to do busted stuff that it was maybe never intended to do. I don't really want a balanced competitive format. And I know there are a lot of people that legitimately do.
Yeah.
But I think a balanced format looks closer to Conquest than it does to EDH. That's my personal opinion.
I never looked at it that way, but that is very true.
Well, Conquest is also balanced for card availability as well. So it's like more like balanced in the same way Modern is balanced.
Yeah, and like, so there's other considerations too, right? And that's that if you're creating a balanced format with the intent to have tournaments, one of the things that you have to consider is the fact that EDH games take a lot longer than 1v1 games on average.
Longer.
And you need to play more games to stratify people enough to rank them, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because every EDH game has 1 winner and 3 losers. You don't rank the losers, right? So if you want to be able to rank 4 players, they have to play a lot of games. Before you can actually say like this player's first, this player's second, this player's third, this player's fourth. So not only do they take longer, you have to play more games. And if you don't have an exact multiple of 4, there's not an easy way to determine who gets buys. And buys are a big deal in a format where you lose 75% of your games, you know?
Right.
Yep.
So like, there's things like that where like, do you maybe make ban list decisions based on what makes games take longer, right? Do you ban fetch lands because they cause people to shuffle for half the game? Do you ban it's stuff like that where it's like, if you're doing a balanced competitive format, you have to think about those things.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sean just edited his first EDH game this week. And as his first game, he just has noticed how much ums and ahs and shuffling. Like when I was whenever I edit gameplay, when I edit gameplay videos, like let's say the game takes 55 minutes, right? I can easily get that game down to 35 minutes by just cutting out the tanking, the pausing, and the shuffling.
In the late game, especially, holy crap! One turn cycle in the late game takes half an hour. You know,
That is true. That is very true. Jim, I appreciate you for coming with us. This was a great conversation, guys. I think I have learned a lot personally. Tim, have you learned a lot?
Yes, way more than I anticipated.
Awesome.
Actually, that
Jim,
came out wrong. It wasn't a matter of more than I anticipated. It was just like more than I like.
I thought he was an idiot.
I didn't think you were an idiot. I just meant like that really did not come out right. I was like, it was just
I got what you meant.
It was a lot more enlightening, like even than I thought it would be. Because like I have listened to a lot of your stuff, and like you have a lot of good stuff to say. Like that. I'm such a huge fan of your Spike on the Mic about power levels. I actually love that, and I would love to see that fleshed out more actually sometime.
I've got some thoughts about this, but I think the next piece of that comes from Watsy and not from me. So we'll see. My fingers are crossed on that one.
I'll keep it crossed with you.
Yeah.
I think you should also, if you ever get to chance, like Tim, also have like great ideas about power levels. Maybe you guys can have a interview session there. But anything you would like to plug, social media, Discord, content?
Yeah, I mean, you can reach me at the Spike Feeders on Twitter. I'm usually on Twitter. That's kind of my preferred social media right now. You can DM me. My DMs are open. At the Spike Feeders is the entire group of the Spike Feeders, and then I've also got my own Twitter, which is at JimTSF. I'm also, if you're watching this on Reddit, I'm Chef Sati on Reddit, which is CHEFSATI. And you can DM me there, or if you see me around posting or whatever. I'm not quite as active on Reddit as I used to be. Yeah, and if you want to have a good faith conversation about the direction of the format, I'm always open for that. I love hearing new ideas. Just expect me to ask a whole lot of questions, because that's generally what I do when people bring me stuff.
That's awesome.
And
You
we'll
can
link all
find
that
us-
stuff in the description.
Awesome. All right, you can find us. Hopefully, you'll be watching us on YouTube at CDH Brews. You can help us keep the lights on by the Patreon at CDH Budget Brews, and we'll have everything on the social media below. Jim, thank you for coming. This was great, and hopefully we can do this soon.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah, this was great.
Yeah.
All right.
All right.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
guys.
everybody.
Have a good night.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.